The calm before the storm. In a distant corner of the galaxy, where stars sparkled like diamonds in the endless void, there was peace. Alien civilizations, some ancient and others young, thrived under the steady light of their suns. Each of these civilizations believed themselves to be the greatest in the universe, with technology and knowledge that surpassed anything they had ever encountered. Life was simple for them. They had conquered their fears, solved their problems, and moved on to expand their empires across the galaxy. They were powerful, and they knew it. On one such peaceful planet, far from Earth, the Galactic Council met. The council was composed of representatives from various species, all of them wise and old, filled with knowledge gained through centuries of existence. They sat around a large circular table, discussing the usual matters: trade, alliances, and ways to maintain peace. The atmosphere was calm and controlled. For all their power, these beings had never known true fear, not since the early days of their civilization. But today, something was different. A strange signal, unlike anything the Council had ever encountered, appeared in the vastness of space. At first, it was a faint blip on their scanners. Just a flicker, nothing more than static, lost in the background noise of the galaxy. But when the signal grew stronger, they turned their attention to it, intrigued by its origin. The signal was coming from a planet called Earth, a place they had never heard of, a planet considered primitive by their standards. How could something from such a backwater world be making such a noise? The signal was simple, a series of symbols and numbers, followed by a short message: "Humanity is coming." For a moment, there was silence in the council chamber. Some of the members laughed. Others exchanged puzzled glances. "Humanity? What is this?" One of the elder aliens muttered. They had never heard of any race by that name, and the thought that such a primitive species could send a message to them seemed almost laughable. Their laughter echoed through the chamber. "You think this is a threat?" asked another council member, a being with shimmering scales and many eyes. "The primitive creatures of Earth surely cannot challenge us. It must be a mistake." But despite the dismissive words, the message lingered in their minds. Something about it felt off. There was no evidence of any advanced technology coming from Earth. How could these humans know of the galaxy, let alone be bold enough to reach out? One council member, more curious than the others, ordered the fleet to investigate. "We will send an envoy," they declared. "We'll visit this planet, and we will put an end to whatever this foolishness is." The others agreed, their confidence unwavering. They knew their technology was far superior to anything Earth could possibly have. The decision was made. The Council's most elite fleet of warships was sent to Earth. Their mission was simple: investigate the signal, find out who these humans were, and determine if they posed any threat. As the fleet traveled through space, the Council members relaxed. This was nothing. They were the masters of the galaxy. No species, no matter how bold, had ever been able to challenge them. The humans, whoever they were, had no chance. However, as they moved closer to Earth, something strange happened. The galaxy seemed quieter, as though the universe was holding its breath. Stars twinkled a little less brightly, and the ships began to feel heavier, as if the air was thicker. The beings aboard the ships couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The fleet arrived at Earth's orbit, and the commanders of the alien ships were greeted with a sight that made them freeze in shock. There was nothing ordinary about this planet. The humans had something they didn't expect, something beyond their understanding. At first, the alien ships couldn't even see it, but as they entered Earth's atmosphere, it became clear. A massive object appeared on their sensors, moving with precision. The humans had a warship, and it was far more advanced than anything the aliens had ever imagined. The warship was enormous, dwarfing anything in the alien fleet. Its sleek black hull gleamed with an otherworldly shine, and strange energy readings radiated from it, unlike anything the aliens had encountered before. The warship's size alone was enough to make the fleet commanders uneasy, but it wasn't just its size. It was its sheer power. The ship was covered in high-tech weapons and shields, all advanced far beyond what the Council's most sophisticated technology could offer. One of the commanders, a seasoned veteran of countless battles, muttered under his breath, "How could they have this?" Panic started to creep into the minds of the alien commanders. This wasn't what they had expected. This wasn't just a small, insignificant species trying to show off. The humans were different. The fleet's commanders tried to maintain their composure, but it was becoming impossible to ignore the growing sense of fear. Their ships, though impressive by their standards, were nothing compared to the warship they now faced. The message that had been received earlier suddenly felt more real, more threatening. Humanity is coming. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a mistake. It was a warning. The fleet commanders quickly huddled together, scrambling to come up with a plan. But there was no time. The humans had already sent a message back, and it was broadcast to every ship in the fleet. The message was simple: prepare to meet us. For the first time in their long lives, the alien commanders were not just worried. They were terrified. They had never felt this way before. And as they watched the warship slowly move into position, the reality of their situation set in. They were no longer in control. The universe was changing, and this time, they were not the ones in charge. The calm before the storm was over. The storm had arrived, and it was human. The unseen power of humanity. The air around the alien fleet felt thicker, charged with a strange energy as they continued to hover above Earth. From their vantage point, they could see the planet in all its beauty. Vast oceans, sprawling continents, and the shimmering blue atmosphere. Yet nothing about the serene landscape below reflected the tension now mounting within the alien ships. The humans they had dismissed as insignificant now stood as the greatest unknown they had ever encountered. The warship that had emerged from the depths of Earth's atmosphere was unlike any vessel they had ever seen, and the closer they got, the more unsettling it became. No one on the alien fleet had the courage to break the silence. Every ship, every commander, every crew member remained still, as though they were waiting for a sign, a hint of what was to come. "What are they waiting for?" muttered one of the younger commanders, his voice trembling. "Why haven't they made any moves? Why haven't they attacked?" In truth, no one had an answer. They had expected a weak species, one whose attempts at self-preservation would have been clumsy at best. They had expected to find a planet that was easy to conquer. Instead, they had found a mystery, an enigma so strange that it unsettled even the most seasoned warriors among them. Inside the alien fleet's command center, the atmosphere was tense. Their instruments showed no signs of any military activity from Earth, and yet the feeling of impending doom loomed over them. The warship was positioned directly in front of the alien fleet, but it remained eerily silent. No weapons were visible, no signs of aggression, only that unshakable, unwavering presence. It was as though the humans were waiting for something, waiting for the alien fleet to make the first move. "Perhaps this is just a test," one of the commanders said cautiously, his voice carrying an edge of doubt. "They want to see how we respond." But the more they watched, the less certain they were. The warship's dark hull gleamed as if it were studying them, analyzing their every move. Its engines emitted an energy pulse every few seconds, sending ripples through the void. The alien sensors couldn't quite grasp the full extent of what was happening. Every scan they conducted came back inconclusive. No readings could describe what this ship was capable of. As hours passed, the tension only increased. The fleet's commanders were caught in a dilemma. They had come here to assert their dominance, to send a clear message that no species could threaten the Galactic Council and live to tell the tale. But they now faced a force they did not understand, a force they could not predict. And the more they stared at that ship, the more they felt like children staring up at something ancient and powerful, something far beyond their comprehension. Then, without warning, the human warship activated a beam of light, a brilliant, piercing stream that shot toward the alien flagship. For a brief moment, There was nothing but the blinding intensity of the beam. The light was so powerful that it seemed to reach deep into the hearts of the alien commanders, pricking at their most primal fears. They had never seen anything like it. Nothing in their galaxy could produce such an intense pulse of energy. "Shield up!" shouted the senior commander, panic rising in his voice. His orders were immediate, but the sheer force of the beam seemed to grow even stronger as it reached the alien flagship. It wasn't just an attack, it was a message. The beam suddenly dissipated, but the silence that followed felt suffocating. No one moved, no one spoke. The aliens were in shock. Their ships were undamaged, but the beam had sent a clear warning. This wasn't a battle. It was a challenge, and the humans were playing a game that none of them understood. The alien fleet remained in formation, their eyes glued to the warship as they tried to process what had just happened. They had been humiliated. The attack, if it could even be called that, hadn't done any real damage, but it had shaken their confidence. No weapon in their arsenal had ever felt as threatening as the silent, unwavering presence of the human ship. Inside the fleet's command center, the alien commanders exchanged uneasy glances. The younger officers were clearly rattled, but the senior commanders refused to show fear. They had seen countless battles, fought against enemies far more dangerous than humans could ever hope to be. But this was different. The humans weren't just unpredictable. They were terrifying. For the first time in their lives, the aliens were not in control. "We need to know more about them," one of the commanders muttered, a cold sweat forming on his brow. "We need to understand what we're up against." But the information they were getting from their sensors only made things worse. The ship was a mystery, and nothing they had tried had provided any answers. It was as if the human warship had somehow tapped into a force that even the aliens couldn't comprehend. Every scan they conducted came back blank, as if the ship itself were protecting its secrets. "Do we have any other options?" another officer asked, looking around at the faces of the other commanders. The question hung in the air, unanswered. No one knew what to do. The calm before the storm had passed. Now, the storm had begun, but the aliens were unprepared for what humanity had brought. The fear had settled deep into their bones. They had come to Earth expecting to conquer, to impose their will on a defenseless planet. But now, they were the ones left wondering what would happen next, and all they could do was wait for the humans to make the next move. The tension in the fleet was palpable as the alien commanders realized that they were facing something far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. The humans weren't playing by any rules they understood. They were on their own path now, and the alien fleet was left to wonder just how far humanity's power stretched. The storm had arrived, and it was a storm unlike anything they had ever known. The hidden force of humanity. The atmosphere inside the alien fleet's command center grew heavier with each passing minute. The humans, who had been dismissed as primitive and weak, had now made it clear that they were anything but. The warship that hovered just outside their fleet's formation sent an invisible wave of tension through every alien vessel, as if the very air around them had become charged with something much more powerful than they had ever imagined. What was that? The voice of one commander cracked, betraying his unease. "That beam, it was something beyond anything we've seen." The senior officer, who had been silent for the most part, finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "I don't know, but it's clear that we're dealing with something far more advanced than we were prepared for. We cannot underestimate them anymore." It had been hours since the human warship had unleashed that strange, blinding pulse of light. Despite the lack of physical damage, the aliens' confidence had been shattered. No longer were they dealing with a species to conquer. They were faced with a force they couldn't predict, couldn't understand, and certainly couldn't control. The fleet's next move was crucial. They had the numbers, the technology, and the battle-hardened experience to defeat any enemy. But nothing about this situation felt like a typical engagement. The humans were not behaving like the weak, defenseless creatures they had expected. No, These humans seemed to be testing them, slowly drawing them into a conflict they hadn't yet fully comprehended. "What if they've been watching us for longer than we think?" one of the younger commanders asked, his voice trembling. "What if they know everything about us?" The senior commander stared out into the dark expanse of space, his mind racing with thoughts he couldn't share with the others. The idea that the humans had been tracking their movements, studying them, learning their weaknesses, it was enough to rattle even the most experienced officer. How could such a young and primitive species have such foresight? A communication screen blinked on, drawing the attention of the commanders. They had received a message from the human warship, but it wasn't an ordinary transmission. It was a series of encrypted symbols, incomprehensible to all but the most advanced deciphering algorithms. The message, while difficult to interpret, contained a strange sense of finality. It was a challenge. No words, just a sequence of symbols that seemed to vibrate with energy. The tone was unmistakable. The senior commander turned to his team, frustration and fear creeping into his voice. "We need answers. We've been standing here long enough. I'm not going to let some unknown species play us like this." He ordered the fleet to engage, but as his command echoed through the ships, an uneasy feeling hung in the air. The alien commanders braced themselves for what they had prepared for, a battle. But no one could shake the feeling that this battle was unlike anything they had fought before. It wasn't just about weapons, tactics, or power. It was something much deeper, something intangible that they couldn't touch or understand. As the fleet moved into position, the human warship remained still, its presence as foreboding as ever. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. The vastness of space, stretching out before them, filled with the unknown. The alien commanders steeled themselves for a confrontation, but deep down, they couldn't shake the thought that they were being drawn into something much bigger than a simple war. Then, without any warning, the warship moved. But it didn't move in a typical manner. No sudden bursts of speed, no heavy acceleration. The ship simply shifted, sliding effortlessly through the void. The aliens watched in disbelief as the human warship closed the gap between them with ease, faster than anything their sensors had registered. It was as if the ship wasn't bound by the same laws of physics the aliens had relied on for centuries. The warship moved with a fluidity that felt unnatural, like it was part of the very fabric of space itself. The fleet's commanders tried to adjust, scrambling to track the ship's movements. But it was as if the human warship anticipated their every move before they made it. It was outsmarting them at every turn. "What is this?" one of the commanders shouted, watching the warship edge closer with a terrifying calm. "We're supposed to have the advantage." But as the human ship neared, the fleet's sensors picked up something that no one could have expected. The human warship wasn't alone. More ships, smaller but equally advanced, emerged from behind the larger ship, and they were closing in fast. The fleet's commanders stared in shock as the second wave of human vessels appeared from behind the planet, moving with the same eerie precision as the first. These ships were not like anything the aliens had ever seen. They were sleek, silent, and efficient, armed with weapons that could level entire fleets with a single strike. The humans had been hiding these ships in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal their true strength. The senior commander cursed under his breath. They'd been hiding these ships the entire time. All along, they were preparing for this. The full scale of the humans' power began to dawn on the alien fleet. This was no longer about a single warship or a few secret weapons. It was an entire fleet, prepared and ready to strike at a moment's notice. The humans had been planning for this day, not just to defend themselves, but to launch a full-scale counteroffensive. They had anticipated the Council's every move, had studied their tactics, and now they were using that knowledge to their advantage. The realization hit the aliens like a wave. They had made a grave mistake. Underestimating the humans was one thing, but this was an entirely different level of warfare. The humans had been playing a game that none of the aliens could even begin to comprehend. With no time to react, The alien fleet braced itself as the human warships powered up their weapons. A few seconds later, a series of brilliant flashes of light filled the sky, as the humans unleashed a salvo of energy blasts that tore through space, each shot as precise and powerful as the last. The battle had begun, and the aliens realized too late that they were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. You said, "The battle unfolds." The vast emptiness of space trembled with the force of humanity's unexpected assault. The human warships, sleek and seemingly invincible, fired with deadly precision, sending energy blasts that cut through the blackness like streaks of lightning. The alien fleet scrambled to respond, but their movements were sluggish in comparison, their massive ships struggling to adapt to the speed and unpredictability of the human forces. The senior commander of the alien fleet watched in disbelief as his ships, once seen as the pinnacle of military might, were slowly outmaneuvered by the humans. The energy blasts from the human warships struck with pinpoint accuracy, disabling their shields and penetrating their hulls with ease. Each blast sent shockwaves through the fleet, rattling the crew aboard the alien vessels, who were now fighting for their lives rather than pursuing their conquest. How are they doing this? The commander muttered to himself, his mind racing to make sense of the situation. They're too fast, too precise. This doesn't make sense. These ships, these humans, are not what we thought they were. The alien vessels tried to regroup, but their communication systems were increasingly filled with static. Every attempt to rally their forces was met with resistance from the humans' well-coordinated tactics. The human ships didn't simply attack. They adapted, anticipating every move the aliens made. It was like they knew the aliens' every weakness before they even realized it themselves. In the midst of the chaos, one of the alien ships, a towering cruiser with massive cannons designed for heavy assault, attempted to engage one of the smaller human vessels. The cruiser fired a volley of powerful energy blasts, its weapons humming with terrifying power. But the human ship, moving with fluid grace, simply dodged the blasts, effortlessly weaving between them as if it had eyes on the future. The alien cruiser's guns fired again and again, but every shot missed its target, each one slamming harmlessly into the emptiness of space. As the battle raged on, the once confident alien commanders grew more frantic. They couldn't understand how they were being outmatched. The humans' tactics seemed unpredictable, their ships too agile, their weapons too powerful. And all the while, they seemed to be just a step ahead. It was as if the humans had been preparing for this exact moment for years. In the heart of the alien fleet, a low-level officer caught sight of something that sent chills down his spine. A human warship had come to a complete stop directly in front of their flagship. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. The two ships faced off, separated by mere kilometers of empty space. Then, without warning, the human ship fired a single concentrated energy beam, aimed directly at the heart of the flagship. The alien officers stared in horror as the beam connected, splitting the flagship's shields apart like they were made of paper. The blast pierced through the ship's defenses, striking deep into its core. Sparks erupted from the hull, and the massive cruiser shook violently as the alien ship's engines began to fail. For a moment, the flagship seemed to hover in space, frozen in time. Then, with a loud groan, the ship veered off course and began drifting helplessly toward the planet below. "Retreat! Pull back!" The senior commander screamed, realizing the depth of the situation. But it was too late. The human forces had already enveloped the entire fleet. One by one, the alien ships began to fall, their shields shattered, their weapons useless against the unrelenting assault. The once proud fleet, which had come to conquer, was now the prey. As the human warships moved in for the final push, the battle grew more intense. Alien ships that had been untouchable mere hours before now faced complete annihilation. One by one, they succumbed to the humans' superior tactics, their once imposing fleets falling apart in the blink of an eye. In the midst of the devastation, The senior commander of the alien fleet tried to regain some semblance of control. His hands trembled as he barked orders to his remaining ships, but there was nothing left to do. The humans had already claimed victory. Their warships continued to move through the wreckage, picking off the remaining alien vessels with cold, efficient precision. Aboard one of the human ships, the crew remained calm, their faces focused on the task at hand. They had been training for this moment for years. They had known the risks, and they had been ready. And now, as the alien fleet was in ruins, they didn't celebrate. They simply moved to the next step, securing the wreckage and ensuring the planet below was protected from any further threats. As the final alien ship drifted helplessly, disabled and lifeless, the fleet commander couldn't believe what had just transpired. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, only to find themselves outmatched, outsmarted, and overwhelmed by a species they had underestimated at every turn. In the silence that followed, one thought echoed through the minds of the remaining commanders and their crews. The humans were not to be trifled with. The aftermath of defeat. The battle was over. The once mighty alien fleet, now reduced to burning debris and crippled ships, drifted through space like the remnants of a forgotten war. The human warships, though scared and battered from the conflict, stood resolute and unyielding, their sleek hulls gleaming under the distant star. The victory was undeniable, but the silence that followed the carnage was deafening. On board one of the human warships, Captain Alina Kor stood at the command deck, her expression cold but resolute. The adrenaline of battle had long since worn off, leaving only the sobering reality of what had just transpired. She surveyed the damage to their own fleet. Several ships had taken hits, and there was a lingering sense of exhaustion among her crew. But despite the cost, they had achieved the impossible. They had not only survived but triumphed over an enemy that had once deemed them insignificant. Captain, a young officer at the console, spoke, her voice shaking slightly. The alien fleet is in full retreat. They've lost communication with their command center. They're not regrouping. Alina nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. There was no joy in victory, not when it had come at such a high price. The battle had been fierce, and the scars would remain long after the debris had been cleared. The alien fleet had not only been defeated, it had been humiliated. Their arrogance had blinded them to the truth. The humans were not the primitive species they had assumed. Now, the galaxy would know what humanity was truly capable of. Captain, another officer called, breaking Alina from her thoughts. We've intercepted a transmission. It's coming from one of the remaining alien ships. They want to speak with us. Alina's brow furrowed. The aliens had been desperate to destroy them, to wipe Earth from existence. Now, after their crushing defeat, they were reaching out. It was a strange request, but one that intrigued her. She motioned to open the channel. The screen flickered to life, and a figure appeared. A tall, imposing alien, its face etched with the marks of one who had seen countless battles and witnessed the rise and fall of many civilizations. Its eyes burned with an intensity that spoke of rage, shame, and something else. The alien was no longer the aggressor. It was now the one seeking answers. Human. The alien spoke, its voice trained. I am Commander Vrath of the Sci-Fi Dominion. We request terms. Alina's gaze remained steady, her voice calm but firm. Terms. After what you did to us, after everything your fleet tried to destroy, you ask for terms. Vrath's eyes narrowed, but there was no anger in them, only a deep, unsettling regret. You don't understand. We did not know who you were. We believed you to be weak, easily crushed, like so many others we've conquered. But now, after what we've witnessed, we were wrong. We are willing to offer peace, not because we fear you, but because we have learned the true nature of humanity. Alina's heart skipped a beat. Peace, from the species that had come to Earth with nothing but destruction in mind. The thought seemed impossible, but the sincerity in the alien's voice gave her pause. Perhaps this wasn't just a plea for survival. It was something more. a recognition that humanity had proved itself in ways no one had expected. "What do you offer, Commander Vrath?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the shock coursing through her. The alien's face softened, though it was still hard to read. "We offer an alliance. The Sci-Fi Dominion is vast, and we have many enemies. We could use your expertise, your tenacity. You have proven that you are not like the other species in this galaxy. You have shown us that strength comes not just from power, but from the will to survive, to adapt. We were wrong to assume you were simply prey." Elena exchanged a glance with her senior officers. An alliance? With a race that had just tried to wipe them out. It seemed unthinkable, but she knew better than anyone that humanity's strength was in its ability to adapt, to change, to take the impossible and make it reality. "We will consider your offer, Commander Vrath," she said at last, her tone firm. "But know this, any alliance will be built on mutual respect. Humanity does not take kindly to being underestimated. If we agree, it will be on our terms, and we will never forget what has happened here." Vrath nodded solemnly, his eyes never leaving Elena's. "Agreed. You have our word. The Sci-Fi Dominion will abide by whatever conditions you set. We seek not to dominate, but to learn and to grow together." The transmission ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Elena turned to her officers, her thoughts racing. The battle was over, yes, but what would come next? An alliance with the Sci-Fi Dominion could change everything, but at what cost? Could humanity truly trust these aliens, or would they simply be biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike again? One thing was clear: humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. They had gone from being seen as a weak, insignificant species to being regarded with caution and respect. The Sci-Fi Dominion, once certain of their superiority, had been forced to reckon with the unyielding strength of humanity's spirit. And in doing so, they had opened the door to a future that could no longer be predicted. But as Elena stared out into the stars, a sense of unease settled within her. She knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were forces out there far greater than the Sci-Fi Dominion. Humanity had shown its strength, but now it would have to prove its wisdom in a galaxy that was no longer willing to overlook them. The true battle for Earth's future was just beginning. The price of peace. The days following the transmission with Commander Vrath were filled with tension and uncertainty. Humanity had been thrust into the galactic spotlight in a way that no one could have predicted. What had started as an unexpected and chaotic battle had now escalated into something far greater. An offer of peace from the Sci-Fi Dominion, once seen as an impenetrable enemy, had sent shockwaves through the military and political leaders of Earth. Captain Elena Kor had found herself at the center of a storm. The world's leaders demanded answers. The citizens of Earth, who had been ready for an all-out war, now found themselves grappling with the reality of a potential alliance with the very race that had sought to destroy them. At the heart of Earth's command center, Helena stood before a large holographic map, her fingers tracing the edges of the stars on display. The vastness of the galaxy stretched before her, and for the first time, it felt smaller. The Sci-Fi Dominion's offer of peace loomed over them like a shadow, promising a future of prosperity, but also carrying with it the undeniable risk of betrayal. "We can't trust them," Admiral Ethan Gray, one of Earth's top military minds, spoke bluntly as he stood beside Elena. His voice was filled with skepticism, the scars of battle still fresh on his face. "The Sci-Fi Dominion showed us no mercy. They attacked us with the intent to wipe us out. What's to stop them from doing it again once they've had time to regroup?" Elena didn't respond immediately. She had heard this argument countless times from her fellow commanders, each one echoing the same concerns. The idea of an alliance with their former enemy felt wrong, and yet there was something that nagged at her, something in the way Commander Vrath had spoken. His words hadn't come from a place of fear, but from something else, something deeper. It was as if they were trying to reach out, acknowledging that they had underestimated humanity in ways they couldn't ignore. I understand your concerns, Ethan, Alina said after a long pause, her voice steady. But we can't afford to make decisions based on fear alone. The Sci-Fi are offering us an alliance, not because they think we're weak, but because they now realize what we're capable of. They've seen firsthand that humanity is not a species to be taken lightly. Gray shook his head, clearly not convinced. And what if it's a trap? What if they're just playing the long game? We can't let down our guard. I'm not suggesting we trust them blindly, Alina replied. But we can't turn away from an opportunity to secure peace, not after everything we fought for. We'll proceed with caution, but we can't ignore the possibilities that come with this. We can use this to our advantage. As the debate continued, Earth's leaders made their decision. The offer from the Sci-Fi Dominion would be accepted, but on one condition: Earth would hold all the power in the alliance. The humans would not be subjugated, not again. They would stand equal to their alien counterparts, and the terms of any agreement would be dictated by humanity's needs. But even as they prepared to negotiate, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Sci-Fi had offered peace, yes, but how genuine was it? Was it a calculated move to secure an advantage, or had the aliens truly learned from their mistakes? Weeks passed, and the tension in Earth's command center grew. The negotiations were held in secrecy, and every movement was analyzed for signs of betrayal. The alien fleet, though defeated, was not completely gone. Some ships had escaped into deep space, and there were whispers of factions within the Sci-Fi Dominion who still viewed humanity as a threat. While Commander Vrath had made his plea for peace, others in his empire might not share his newfound respect for the human race. Alina sat alone in her quarters one night, staring at the stars through the large viewport. The light of distant suns reflected off the surface of her desk, casting long shadows across the room. She couldn't sleep. The weight of what was coming pressed down on her, suffocating in its uncertainty. She thought of the soldiers who had fought so bravely, the civilians whose lives had been shattered by the war, and the young officers who looked to her for guidance. What if they were wrong? What if this was all a mistake? Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of an incoming message. She glanced at the screen, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the source. Commander Vrath. Without hesitation, she opened the channel. Captain Kor. The alien commander's voice came through, as calm as it had been in their earlier communication. I understand your people have made their decision. I respect that. But there is something you need to know. Alina sat up straighter, her instincts on high alert. What is it, Commander? Vrath's expression remained neutral, but there was an underlying urgency in his words. There are factions within my fleet, within my dominion, who do not share the vision I have for peace. They are preparing to strike again. They see your offer as a weakness, and they will not rest until they see your world burn to ash. Alina felt a chill run down her spine. Are you telling me that you've been lying to us? No, Vrath replied quickly, his tone sharper than before. I have not lied to you. But I was not aware of the dissent within my own ranks. Now I am. The Dominion is a fractured empire, and it is only a matter of time before war is reignited. Her mind raced. The Sci-Fi Dominion had already proven they were not to be trusted, and now it seemed that their internal divisions were a ticking time bomb. If Earth entered an alliance with them now, would they be swept up in an inevitable war once again? The choice was clear. They had to act fast. The battle for peace had just become a battle for survival. Thank you for the warning, Commander, Alina said, her voice steady. But your peace offer is no longer enough. We will defend our planet, and we will not hesitate to strike if necessary. As the transmission ended, Alina stared out at the stars once more. The peaceful future they had hoped for seemed further away than ever, and the price of peace was about to be higher than they could ever have imagined. The final decision. The galaxy was once again on the edge of chaos. What had begun as a glimmer of hope, an unexpected offer of peace from the Sci-Fi Dominion, had now turned into a high-stakes gamble for Earth's survival. Captain Alina Kor stood at the heart of the command center, the weight of the universe pressing down on her shoulders. The moment of truth had arrived. The next move would determine humanity's future. In the days since Commander Vrath's warning, tensions on Earth had reached a boiling point. The government, military leaders, and the citizens who had once rallied behind the idea of peace with the Sci-Fi were now divided. Some believed that their chance at a new era had been poisoned by the revelation of the Dominion's internal factions. Others, however, saw no other option but to press forward and strengthen the alliance, hoping that the goodwill of Commander Vrath would be enough to safeguard humanity from the brewing storm. But Alina knew the truth. The threat was no longer just from the Sci-Fi. The galaxy itself had become a powder keg, and humanity was caught in the middle of it. The quiet hum of the command center filled the air as Alina reviewed the latest intelligence reports. Her eyes scanned the data, seeking a pattern, a clue that might tell her what to do next. There were rumors, whispers among the soldiers, that a large fleet of Sci-Fi warships had begun to move. Their destination was unclear, but the signs were unmistakable. It was only a matter of time before they would make their move. "Captain," a voice broke through her thoughts, and she turned to face Lieutenant Maris, one of her most trusted officers. "The Sci-Fi fleet is on the move. We've intercepted communication from their forces. They're mobilizing for an attack." Alina's pulse quickened. "How long until they reach our space?" Maris didn't hesitate. "At current speed, they'll be in our system within 5 days. And based on their last movement, they're preparing for a full assault. 5 days. 5 days before Earth would face the greatest threat it had ever known." Alina knew that the decision they made in the next few hours would either ensure humanity's survival or doom them to an unthinkable fate. Her eyes flicked to the holographic map on the wall, displaying the vastness of the galaxy. The Sci-Fi fleet, though still many light years away, was moving with purpose. Every moment brought them closer, and Earth had no way of knowing the true scope of their intentions. The fragile peace that had been offered now seemed like a distant memory. The stakes were higher than ever before. "Alina," Admiral Gray's voice echoed from behind her. "You know what we have to do. We can't afford to trust them anymore. The Sci-Fi will strike first, and we'll be left fighting a war we're not ready for. We need to prepare for battle now." She turned to face him, her mind racing. He was right. The risks of negotiating with the Sci-Fi were too great. Their internal divisions had already proven they couldn't be trusted, and Commander Vrath's warning had only confirmed it. But there was another part of her, a part that had fought so hard to keep the dream of peace alive. She couldn't give up on that yet, not when so many lives depended on it. "I know, Ethan," Alina replied softly, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "But we can't just act on instinct. We have to be smarter than that. We'll defend Earth, but we need to be prepared for what comes next. If we act too quickly, we risk a war that we can't win." Admiral Gray's expression hardened, but he said nothing more. Alina had always known that the military's first instinct would be to fight. It was what they had been trained for. But peace wasn't about military might. It was about understanding, strategy, and most importantly, unity. If they gave in to fear and anger, they would lose everything. Time was running out. Alina convened a meeting with her most trusted allies, including several key figures in the military and government. The room was tense, filled with the weight of their collective responsibility. The fate of humanity rested in their hands. "We need a plan," Alina said, addressing the group. "The Sci-Fi fleet will arrive soon, and we can't wait any longer to make our decision. But we also can't go into battle blindly. We need intelligence. We need to understand their true intentions before we make a move." One of the strategists, General Ward, spoke up. "There's an old military saying, 'Keep your enemies closer.' If we launch a reconnaissance mission into their fleet, we might be able to gather more information on their movements. It's risky, but it might give us the edge we need." Alina nodded. It was a dangerous idea, but it was their best shot. If they could infiltrate the Sci-Fi fleet without detection, they might be able to find out if the threat was as dire as it seemed, or if there was still a chance for peace. But the risks were immense. If they were caught, the consequences would be catastrophic. "We'll need the best crew for this mission," Elena said, turning to her team. "And we'll need to move fast." As the plan began to take shape, Elena couldn't help but feel the weight of every decision, every strategy, every life that hung in the balance. She had always believed in humanity's ability to adapt and overcome, but this time felt different. The threat they faced wasn't just a war. It was the potential for the very destruction of everything they had worked so hard to build. The next few days would define Earth's place in the galaxy, and no one could predict what would happen when the first shot was fired. "Prepare yourselves," Elena said, her voice quiet but resolute. "This is the final decision. We either fight to protect everything we've built, or we risk losing it all." And so, with that, the countdown to the most important mission in Earth's history began. The battle for peace and for survival was about to begin.